Perfect. Okay, so one, two, three. Lorna Luft, thank you so much for doing this. I'm so honored, seriously.
Thank you. Oh, don't be honored. You're part of the family. Stop.
Well, you know how much I admire you, and I'm such a huge fan. And I can't believe it's just, it's sad that I haven't been able to see you in so long. I mean,
I know.
obviously, the last year has been insane. And what has life been like for you during this
Well, it's
period?
been interesting. Um, at first I was in New York in March and uh it it became very real and all of a sudden everybody was talking about Broadway being shut down and it became really frightening because we didn't have answers to questions of what is going on, what's happening. And then we sort of got notice to shelter in place, get out of where you are and go home. And
Hmm.
I did. And I came back to Palm Springs um March 11th or something like March 11th, and Broadway closed down March 15th. So it was really frightening, but I kept um researching and listening to scientists and doctors and all of the people who knew what they were talking about. And I said to myself, uh, this is something we've never heard the word pandemic. We had never heard, all of the things that happened with the pandemic, um, that we had so many years ago. It's nothing, it was something that nobody sort of got us prepared for. It was like all of a sudden, people were sick, people
Hmm.
were dying, and it reminded me a lot of the AIDS epidemic. It
Hmm.
reminded me a lot of going back to a place that I had already unfortunately visited
Hmm.
in the 80s, and I thought to myself, okay, we've been through something sort of like this, um, meaning the fear at the beginning of we don't know what this is. How do we get it?
Hmm.
How are we transporting this to each other? And I
Hmm.
because I think that a lot of us learn to who are of a certain age, we learn to listen to the experts, listen to the science, listen to doctors, and not and tune out the white noise.
Hmm.
And then, I mean, then I've been in my house for 7 months.
You've been in Palm Springs since March. You
Yeah,
haven't left.
no.
Wow.
Well, I did. I'm not going to say that. I did go up to Seattle
Oh, right.
just a few weeks ago to see my grandchildren because I hadn't seen them in 7 months. And
Wow.
I was very, very careful. I called all my doctors and said, can I, are people traveling? They said yes. But it wasn't on mob type travel like it was at Thanksgiving where everybody just, decided, oh, well, I'm just going to go get on a plane. And there were mobs
Hmm.
at the airport. I mean, I think there were four people on my flight and then
Oh my
seven
God.
people coming back. And it was like,
Wow.
okay. Yeah,
Wow.
yeah. And
You
then
got
I,
a whole
and
road
then I,
to
and then
yourself.
I, yeah, but then I self quarantined for 2 weeks after that.
Yeah. No, I mean it's such a weird time, but I mean I love the fact that during this time I was going to talk to you about your concert at the end, but maybe
Yeah.
we can talk about it now. The fact that you've been doing these lunches with Lorna, which are so cool. I love that you've been talking to your fans, and it's such a cool idea that you're having these virtual lunches with people.
Yeah. I just thought about this because I thought I've got to reach out to not only the fans of who and I didn't know any of these people. They weren't friends of mine. These were real fans that have supported me. I thought, how do I reach them and say, we're all going through this together. Let's do.
Mhm.
And the one thing I thought to myself, what do I miss? I miss going to lunch. I love going to lunch more than I love going to dinner. And I just love the fact that we can sit around a table and that we can talk and see how each other is and how we are getting through a week or how we're getting through this or who what gossip somebody has. And I just missed going to lunch. So I thought, why don't I just go to lunch? And we figured it out how I could do this, and it's been great. It's been fun, and it's been a lot of people who are the same people. We just check in with each other. Um, I just think it's something that's been really important to do is to just check in, even if it's just a text to say you okay.
And so is it people that you like new fans or people you haven't met before? Or is it
Oh, I've
people
never
that
met any of them.
wow, that's incredible.
No, why
Wow.
not? You
That's
know,
awesome. Yeah,
they're going through the same thing
it's
you
true.
know they've going through the same fear or the same despair or the same uh things that we are. They're just in different places, and I thought, there's nothing unusual about being frightened or being really confused or being this has all been, I call this whole period testing 1 2 3. This is what it's been. I mean, the testing was in one, we were finding out about all of this, and two, we went through this and still are going through the hideousness of all of the sickness and people are dying and all of that. We're still going through that. And three is
Hmm.
we are seeing light. We are,
Hmm.
because that vaccine is around the corner. And I think to myself, when I watch people throwing caution to the wind right now and getting on airplanes and doing things that they have come on our phones on the news and said, please don't do that. I think,
Hmm.
don't mess it up now. We've come so far.
Hmm.
Just, it's like Frankie Valley, just hang on. It's just like, just please just hang on.
Yep.
Okay. And don't mess it up now. Don't screw it up now.
Hmm. Especially because we're so close to the
We're so
vaccine and
close.
we're just a few months away, if that,
Well,
till as
yeah.
people
I mean,
start getting vaccinated,
yeah, but I mean,
So,
people, I understand people have, what they say, they've had enough and this, that, and the other. Well, listen, you know, yeah, we have, but you can't say that to a family who's lost a family member.
right.
You can't, you have to just think to yourself, what can we do to make this really let the sunshine in? What can we
Hmm.
do to just, and it is because once you see the finish line, okay, we're gonna cross it, but
Hmm.
it may get moved and it may, but we see it.
Hmm. If
And
this is going to be over at some point,
at some point,
probably some point next year. So
yeah,
it's just a question of waiting a little longer. Yeah.
yeah, but just
Um,
hang on.
yeah. I was going to ask you. So I know that this isn't the first virtual concert that you've done, right? That you've already done a few during this period. I know my Christmas memories is a Christmas concert, but you've already done a few of these virtual concerts
Yeah,
before.
I have, and it's been um well, first of all, I mean, I have trouble with email. I have trouble with texting. I don't go on social media. Um, I'm old. Okay, all right. So I just don't do any of it. But when we found that we could uh do concerts and how to do them and about the internet, it was all my husband. I take no credit for anything. I am technically challenged, and I am the first one to say it. I suffer from this. My children watch me send an email and they grab the phone away from me and they say, "You're scaring me." Um, I, I just, I grew up in a different generation of um, not not being public and not letting people know that I'm sitting having coffee
Hmm.
and all of that. And so when we started to do these concerts, it was so challenging
Hmm.
because being a performer, you're used to seeing an audience and not being on the Brady Bunch in little
Hmm.
squares. Okay. And so and hearing their reaction and just feeling that connection. And let's face
Hmm.
it, this isn't doing that. And it never
Hmm.
will, because it was never designed to do that. But
Hmm.
if it is the only way that we can communicate, then
Hmm.
that's what it is. And
Hmm.
so we learned. I mean, I've learned about a mute button. Okay? I mean, it's like I didn't know any of this. I didn't know any, things like my husband. And so we have done these concerts and we have figured out how to do them and make them as hopeful and joyful and fun
Hmm.
for people because we know what they're going through. We know that there is people are feeling the real effects of isolation.
Hmm.
And uh, that can be terrifying. It
Hmm.
can be terrifying, maybe not for the first week, but this is now, we're 9 months into this. And that's the one thing I've heard from my friends is the isolation. And I get it. That's one of the reasons I do this, so
Hmm.
that they have someone that they can watch, something that the people that people in show business are human. Because I know we sometimes people say, "Oh, well, they're in show business," and no, no, wait, we get it. We really do get it. We're a lot. You have to think people in show business. We're the first people to sometimes step up because we get it. All right, and we're not immune to hardship, and we're not immune. And I guess because we do wear our emotions on our sleeve, people think that we don't understand reality, that we think that because we're actors, we're always playing a part, and that couldn't be further from the truth. And I
Hmm.
think that the incredible people in this business who are suffering from lack of work, we've stepped up and we've helped
Hmm.
each other in a way
Well, the
that,
fact that you're, especially performers and actors and musicians, your job is to, and your lifestyle is that you're always out there meeting people and interacting with people. So, in fact, it must be especially hard if that's what you're used to. If you're used to that personal, in that interpersonal experience. So, yeah,
yeah,
I can
what's
imagine it's
really been
difficult.
hard is that after you do a concert,
Hmm.
where, on in this medium, I should say, of Zoom and all that, there's no green room.
Hmm.
You know, there's no one patting you on the back saying, "Great job." Oh, that
Hmm.
was, you just go back into the kitchen. Okay. And it's like, okay, all right. And you think to yourself, all right, well, I did it and I hope everybody had a good time. And then, I'm able to read the comments.
Right.
But that's what has been really difficult is we're used to, I guess it's the adulation of when you perform or you do something that you not only get this, but you
Hmm.
feel that. And this is what we haven't been able to do
Hmm.
in 9 months. And that's been tough. That's been hard.
I can imagine. But I know something I really thought was cool was when we talked about a little before about, the concert and the types of songs that you were picking. I thought it was so interesting that you were picking songs specifically that sort of matched the feeling and the vibe of what we're going through right now versus like songs that are celebratory and super
Oh,
uplifting.
you
You were
have
trying to be
oh,
sensitive to that.
you have to
And
be. I mean,
yeah.
you really have to be. You can't. There are certain songs that you just have to. I'm a huge, huge fan of lyricists. Okay,
Hmm.
and I've always felt that. they always get the short end of the stick. The composer, it's all about the composer and yeah, the lyricist. I'm always about the lyric. What is this song saying? What is this song? Because when you sing a song, you just don't sing la 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 la. Somebody wrote something.
Hmm.
It's words and it means something, and that's what touches you. Um,
Hmm.
and so I look at lyrics and I think to myself, does this, I mean, just because we are in the holidays, just because we are going through um, a time that is always, in my life, has always been happy because of Christmas and all of this Christmas, we have to really think about others. And we have to
Hmm.
think about what we are saying. We have to listen and
Hmm.
we have to think about, I just think because we've had so many things thrown at us in these 9 months and well you can say in 4 years, we've had a lot of stuff thrown at us, and now I think it's a time, if you're going to get anything maybe good out of this whole situation of being in your house and being safe, the one thing that I've thought about is what have I learned to be that's good, and it's that I've had to stop. um, it's sort of like we were on this massive highway and we were going at full tilt and the green lights were on and we were going and there was no yellow. It just
Hmm.
stopped.
Hmm.
Okay, and it felt sort of like, that commercial of slow motion people in a car crash, when you see them go forward and then the glass shatters and
Yeah.
they go, that's what we've been through. We have been
Hmm.
through that. And I think, okay, we have, this has been a real crash. And I
Hmm.
think to myself, okay, what have we taken out of this? And it is to stop. And
Hmm.
because of the vaccine, because we see light at the end of the tunnel, because we see all of this wonderful feeling of hope,
Hmm.
I just realize that we just need now to go into the yellow
Hmm.
and don't go into just back to the green where
Right.
everybody's going loopy and not listening and go and doing all that. Let's go into the safe zone of the yellow of warning. All right.
Hmm.
And don't forget what we've been through, what we still are going to go through, because
Hmm.
everybody's talking about the vaccine. Well, honey, you can't go to CVS and get it. All right,
Hmm.
it's not like where are you going? Oh, I'm going down to Rite Aid and get that. Stop. All right, it's not it's on the horizon, but don't throw caution to the wind and start
Hmm.
taking stupid pills.
Hmm.
Okay, and throw everything away that we have done in 9 months because
Hmm.
that you think that this vaccine is going to solve everyone's problems.
Hmm. Without a doubt. And so the virtual concerts is called My Christmas Memories, and it's on
Yeah.
December 17th. Is
Yeah.
that right?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. And then people can buy tickets on your website, which
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
lornaluft.com. But no, of course I'm excited to tune in. I'm sure it's going to be awesome.
It'll be
But
fun.
I'm sure it's going to, yeah, it's always. And by the way, I have seen you perform, I think, live a couple of times. Of course, I've seen I've seen lots of your clips and stuff. I mean, you're incredible. You're such
Oh,
an
bless you.
incredible singer and performer, and so people really should buy tickets. It'll be great. So now that we've talked a little about what's happening right now, I thought I would go back a little bit
Yeah.
and talk about. Well, I guess in order to really explain sort of our, how we met in our relationship, we should start even before that, which was Where the Star is Born, which came out in 1954. You were born shortly around the time that it came out. Is
I was
that
born
right? I
in
think
52. So I was
52. Oh
young.
wow. Okay, so you were there. You were just very 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 young.
Yeah.
Yeah. but I know the film means a lot to you personally, and I know to the point where you even wrote a book about it. A Star is Born, Judy Garland in the film that got away, which I'm very happy to have a copy of. People should buy that too.
Thank you.
Um, but maybe you can talk a little about why the film means so much to you, and people, because some people don't know the whole story of how incredible the whole evolution has been. So maybe you can talk a little about that and about because I never met my grandfather, but I know you were present at the 1983 screenings for the restoration, which my grandfather attended. So maybe you can just talk a little bit about that journey up until that the restoration.
Well, your grandfather was such a wonderful, inspirational friend, true, honest human being that he was a gift, okay? And he was not only a brilliant, brilliant actor, but he was a kind man. He was a generous actor, and everybody who worked with your grandfather always, the stories I've heard have always been he was so great. And that's sort of wonderful because when people are not here, you like people like to gossip. There was never ever ever anything about your grandfather except for how much people adored him and your grandmother. So I mean, that was, and I was lucky enough to talk with your grandfather at the 1983 release when they had what they said was the restored version, which
Right.
it wasn't, because I'm sure that everyone knows that A Star is Born has now been made 5 times. And because it started off with a movie called What Price Hollywood, and then it went into A Star is Born, and then it went into A Star is Born, then it went into A Star is Born, and then again A Star is Born. So it's one of those gifts that keeps on giving. And I've always thought to myself, why do they keep remaking this film? And I think it's always been because it really isn't a story about Hollywood. It's a story about human nature.
Mm-hmm.
And we can all relate to um, all of the emotional levels of the story of these two unbelievable characters that
Mm-hmm.
we watch their growth, we watch their happiness, and we watch the destruction. And
Mm-hmm.
we watch, but they just put it in Hollywood. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
but that's one of the reasons that I think that it, uh, has been made so many times. But it really is, for me, I think it is my mother's pièce de résistance. I mean, it really, really,
Mm-hmm.
I've watched it, I can't tell you how many times, and her work on it was just breathtaking. And
Mm-hmm.
your grandfather's work on that movie was absolutely just stunning. And then it was truly life imitating art, imitating all of that when they took the movie away from my father, who produced the film, and chopped it up and threw away film, and all of the
Mm-hmm.
stories that, I have told over the years about, wanting to see the original uncut version of A Star is Born, which I know I'm never going to find because it does not exist. And believe me, I have searched, I have looked, I have um, I've talked to everyone from directors, actors, and lunatics about trying to find this movie, and I've just sort of come to the conclusion that I'm never going to see it, and that's all right. But
Mm-hmm.
I know as much as I possibly can about the making of, the the release of it, and the
Mm-hmm.
destruction of it. So that's why I think it's so important, because it was my mother's film as an adult, um,
Mm-hmm.
that was so extraordinary. And all of the versions of the movie have been respectful. Um, I everybody wanted to know what I felt about the Lady Gaga Bradley Cooper. I loved it. I loved it. They made it their
Hmm.
own, and
Hmm.
they made it respectful, and they put in things to pay homage to the 54 version.
Right.
And I loved that. And I told them that. I told them that.
I
Um,
think both Gaga and Bradley Cooper both said when they were asked which version they both, not only liked the most, but like wanted to emulate the most. They both said the 54 version, which I thought was interesting because on a superficial level, it's very different. But like you said, there are little things like that they do, and whether it's certain lines or things that she wore both in the film, but also at the premiere. I think Bradley Cooper, I heard someone asked him at a screening which version of Norm or Mr. Maine, the Jackson Maine, Norman Maine, did you want to emulate? He said James Mason. So I think that it's just interesting that some people may say, well, on a superficial level, it's most like the Barbra Streisand version, but I think in a lot of ways it has the same sort of heart as the Judy version.
I
You
think
know?
so. And I talked to Bradley. I love saying that. Just love saying that. Um, uh, about his love, and trust me,
Mhm.
he's looked for the uncut version. I
Wow.
mean, he called Warner Brothers and he called everyone he knew because he wanted to know if it was. And I said, well, welcome to the ride. Because, there are a lot of us that have been on this ride. Um,
Yeah.
and unfortunately, you didn't find it. I didn't find it, but we found as much as we can. And he was just so kind and so generous with me.
Hmm.
And I just, as I said, Gaga was her own. She uh, she knew what was expected. She stepped up and she hit it out of the park. I
Hmm.
thought that that was really wonderful because, you know, I don't know what it is about human nature, but sometimes we don't like to see people succeed. We like them to fail because we can make fun of that,
Right.
which is unfortunate. But in this business, it does happen. I was rooting for her 1,000%, and she was phenomenal. She was
Hmm.
great.
She was great.
She was
Um,
great.
and I read a quote where you said that it's still kind of emotional for you to watch the original watch the 54 version. I mean, I can say that for me and my dad, especially my dad, it's really hard to watch, but the entire film, but also particularly the ending, when my grandfather walks into the water, and I mean the whole movie, when he's sitting in bed and he hears Judy talking to, I think to Oliver Niles, and he breaks down, and it's such a.
Charlie
I think you're
Bickford,
right.
I mean, Charlie Bickford was so
Charlie
wonderful.
Bickford.
I mean, he
Yeah,
was great. I
it's
think
such an emotional, heart wrenching film. Every so many scenes where you're just like, oh my god.
well, it was my
It's.
mom's idea to do the remake after the Janet Gaynor Frederick
Mhm.
March film. And a lot of people thought, "Ooh, this is a little bit, this is a little close to home."
Mhm.
And she said, "That's why I want to do it. But I want it to be a musical." And it was all her idea. And everybody who signed on as the creatives, they signed on because of her. My father produced it, but all of the people that, like Q-Core, Moss Hart, everyone, all of they did it to work with her because they had
Mhm.
grown up with her. And in fact, George
Mhm.
Q-Core worked on The Wizard of Oz.
Right. Right.
So it was sort of like it was like a sort of come full circle. Um,
Mhm.
and that's why I think the film it has so much heart
Mhm.
and
Absolutely.
so much of an emotional tug to everybody who has ever seen it. And it was interesting because when the last version came out, everybody said, I've got to go back and see, because a lot of people hadn't seen the 54. And it was just lovely to get a new audience.
Hmm. Oh
And
yeah.
I got so many messages of, I never knew, and oh my God, and this, that, and the other. I just sort of sat and went, mm-hmm.
Well, it's funny, when I talk to millennials, other millennials, young people who haven't probably seen the 54 version, like someone will say, "Oh, his grandfather was in A Star Is Born." And they go, "Wait, the Lady Gaga version?" I go, "No, no, no." I go, because they have no point of reference. So I say the Judy Garland version. I say he played the Bradley Cooper character, which is fine because look, if that's their point of reference, if that introduces them to the original film, then that's a great thing. I think you're right that because of the new version, it's got the older version has gotten a big new audience.
Oh yeah.
You
Yeah,
know,
yeah, yeah. And there was a lot and I have to bless TCM because I have to say that they were also running What Price Hollywood. Now that's the original nucleus of A
hmm
Star Is Born, and a lot of people have never seen that. And
hmm
I've always said, go watch that and go watch the Janet Gaynor
mm,
Frederick March because it's
yeah.
really extraordinary, and go back and just see how it has evolved. And I
I
think,
watched that for the first time not too long ago, and I loved it. Actually, I mean, it's a little corny, but I mean, but it's kind of it's a 1937,
yeah,
era of 30s film. I mean, but I thought they were both great. Both
yeah,
Janet Gaynor and Frederick March was amazing. I mean, and to
right.
see
But
Hollywood at that time.
have
Go
you
ahead.
have you gone back and seen What Price Hollywood?
No, I have. I've never seen What Price Hollywood, and I've actually.
You
I
should.
should have watched the Streisand version, but I haven't. I was even though I love Barbara Streisand, I'm like,
Who doesn't?
you can't beat. I mean, in my mind, of course, I'm like, you can't beat the Garland version. Come
I
on,
think I think that
Amanda Got Away is, I think, honestly, the greatest musical sequence in history. I think. I mean, just her performance. I mean, it's how do you beat that? How do you beat that?
I don't
You
think
know?
you should try.
No.
I mean, I just think you should just leave that alone. And I
Yeah.
think that Barbara and Chris went off and they did another, I mean, they did their version,
Right.
right?
Right.
But unfortunately, they were the first remake.
Right.
They were gunning for them. I mean, people were just, it was like sort of you're stepping on, some sacred ground here.
Right.
And 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 I understood what they were doing, why, and trying, and all of that. Um, and I've always thought, they're not going to be the last.
hmm
Okay.
I mean,
And,
do
and
you think
I,
there
and
may
I,
be another one? Do you
oh yeah,
think that? Do
oh
you
yeah,
think
yeah, yeah,
so?
yeah, 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 yeah. I can tell you there was.
Oh
I'm
my
telling
God.
you, probably, yeah. I'm,
That would be 6'6". It would be. My God.
well, I mean, I'll tell you one thing, which always made me laugh. Um, I was at one of the many, many, uh, I guess you would call the season, as they call the Oscar season of
hmm
award seasons and all that. And I was standing with the great and extraordinary Spike Lee. And
hmm
Spike Lee said, "You don't think this is going to be the final version, do you?" I said, "Will you stop?" He said, "Honey, we're going to be at some party together in a while. Please. They are going to keep making this movie and making this movie." And I started laughing. Spike Lee makes me laugh. So he's so wonderful. And I'm such a huge, huge, fan of Spike Lee. But when he said that, I burst out laughing because he knew that I thought, I don't think this is going to be, it's just going to keep going on.
Oh my God. I mean, it could end up being like James Bond, except in this case, it's the same film over and over and over again. Like in 22 in 2200, it's going to
Yeah.
be like the 20th version.
Oh yeah.
You never know. You never know. It could be.
Esther goes to
Yeah.
college, Norman Maine, becomes
Yeah.
a
Yeah.
professor. It's
Comes
like,
back
oh
from
my,
the
oh yeah, the whole thing. Yeah.
yeah. No, but one thing I wanted to mention, I forgot to mention, which I love from your book, is when it came to trying to find so just for people who don't know, there was an original version, a longer version of the 1954 Star is Born that got cut because a lot of it got cut because they were trying to fit more screenings into the theaters when it came out, and the original version has never been found. And there's a story in the book about when you were trying to find it, and you and Rex Reed went to a screening of what you thought was going to be. It was like, oh my God, we finally found the original version. And what happened when you went to the screening?
Well, I had gotten this phone call from a lunatic. Okay, that's the only way that I can describe this guy because he was really nuts. And he said, I have it. What do you have? And he'd say, and he dropped notes off at my apartment. He knew where I lived in New York.
Oh my
And
God.
he'd say, I've got, and then he gave a long story about his uncle who was a guy who was at Warner Brothers and this. And it was a whole long story. And Rex Reed, who is, been a friend of mine for so many years, he is as avid a fan as you can imagine of the original film that did come out in the movie theaters, but was only in the movie theaters for 2 weeks, and then they brought all the copies back and chopped it up with scissors, literally. Um, so this guy would call me, and he would say, I don't want to be. I don't want to go to the police. Please don't go to the police. I'm not going to the police. He said, well, listen, I'm going to call you at a phone booth on 57th and 7th Avenue and pick up that phone and I will tell you where we can arrange. And I went, okay. And I called up Rex and I said, okay, listen to me. There's a guy. And Rex Reed to this day says, if you ever say to me, there's a guy, I'm gonna kill you. And I go, okay. So Rex and I started listening to this lunatic. And he started saying that he had the version that he would only give it to us once. We could see it once. And so Rex and I thought we went through trials and tribulations of getting phone calls on street corners.
Oh my
And I,
God.
we thought to ourselves, what are we, I mean, you think this is real? I don't know. So finally, he gave a date. We rented a screening room on 57th Street. Rex ordered champagne. I called Kay Thompson. I gave her the whole lowdown. She said, I will be there. And those were the four people. We were there. We were in the screening room. The projectionist said, I've just gotten 4 or 5 cans of film and we opened the champagne. We said, here, we're going to finally see it. Honey, it was a copy of Good News without the French lesson in it. We got taken down a garden path, and Kay
Wow.
Thompson just looked at me and said, and there you have it. And I thought, well, yeah. And so, I
Wow.
mean, that's when I learned my lesson about
I'm never following
guy.
these like
There's a
these.
guy. I think, oh no, 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 you don't.
I can't even imagine. I
Oh
mean,
my
it's so
God.
perfect. It's so perfect. I'd
I
be
mean,
so pissed off.
well, we weren't pissed off. We were just duped.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, it was kind of funny, but it'd be frustrating. It'd be
Well,
really
it
frustrating.
was such silence when it started. And Kate said, and there you have it. Well, I mean, she broke the ice of,
Oh my God.
oh yeah.
It's so
Yeah.
brilliant.
Well, it was I've given up hope on finding the original, but I think that Warner Brothers has done an incredible job of putting back together, when they found the whole soundtrack and they found as much of this movie as I think we're ever going to see, and they put
Right.
that out.
Well, I wanted to ask you because I saw the photo. I actually just recently found photos or like screenshots of the LA Times and they had photos of you, Liza, and my grandfather at the '83 screening. Do you have any? So there was a screening in LA. There was a screening in New York when they showed the restored version. Do you have any recollections about that whole
Oh
experience?
yeah. It was at Radio City.
Radio
Small
City.
little intimate venue. Okay. I mean,
God, what I would do would have been able to
it
to have
was
been there.
it
You know.
was oh my God. I was doing a I think I was doing a show in New York and the producers let me out. So I could go to the LA screening, but I mean the New York screening at Radio City was just extraordinary, and Gene Allen did an extraordinary job in putting this movie back together, and it was really I guess, I mean, everybody's been watching the Queen's Gambit. It was a chess game of finding out who did what move and what happened, and it was, one of the great Hollywood real dramas. And
Mm-hmm.
when it aired, when it finally came on the screen, and we were all sitting there, and I looked over, and your grandfather was there. That's when I was okay. I was okay until we all had to go on stage after that ending. And I just remember I started to crumble. And it was your grandfather who put his arm around me and he said, "Come on, buck up, kid." And I went, "Okay, yeah, all right."
Wow.
I mean, that's what he was. And that's what my mother loved about him. He was that pull your act together and
Mm-hmm.
whatever. And then, of course, when it was all over, we all cried. I mean, we all did. But for
What?
that moment, he said, "Come on, buck up, kid."
Wow. Well, I had never heard that story. That's incredible. And I mean, I've seen the pictures, of you, my dad, who, by the way, sends his love, and my mom too.
Oh,
I know how much my grandfather loved your mom, and he admired her. I mean, I watched an interview not too long ago where he said that, back in the late '70s, I think he said that he thought that she was, up there with Chaplin as one of the great performers, and not just a great singer, but she was a great comedian and
oh
a
yeah.
great, and a great performer, and she said, and yet also could, make people feel so emotional. And, I mean, she was on so many levels. I know how much he looked up to her as a performer. And I saw a picture of you, my dad, my aunt, Portland, James, Liza, all together at that screening. And I was thinking, like, wow, like it's pretty incredible when you look at those pictures,
Yeah, I mean, it was just a wonderful, wonderful celebration of
Mm-hmm.
this incredible, because we never thought it would happen. We never thought it would,
Right.
they could find everything. And they have found more and put it out again.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and it's just been everyone, I think's sort of life's work to try to see what people can, what the studios can piece together. And Warner Brothers has just done a fantastic job
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
um, in piecing it back together. And they've now come to the realization that it should have never been treated like that. And
Mm-hmm.
I think that's because of the change of guard, all of that, and uh, I'm grateful, internally grateful to Warner Brothers for their admiration, their love of this film, and how it has now been treated. And
Mm-hmm.
I have to say that when the Bradley Cooper Lady Gaga film that week, I was at home and I knew they were going to run it on TCM, but it was Bradley Cooper who introduced it.
Wow.
And I thought to myself, how generous.
Wow.
How generous that Bradley Cooper
Wow.
introduced the 54 version on TCM. I was
I
so
think I remember
glad.
seeing that. Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, that was so rare. I mean, it's very rare that, you know, remakes sort of get acknowledged, that the actors in the new version, or even the director or whoever, the people involved in the new version sort of pay homage to the original. That very rarely happens.
it just
And I,
shows you who
yeah,
he is.
right.
It shows you that Bradley Cooper is just an absolutely generous, wonderful, great
Mm-hmm.
person that everybody in this industry talks about being that way.
Mm-hmm.
And he
Mm-hmm.
is. And every all
Mm-hmm.
the all of the heads of Warner Brothers, they've told me, how much he invested in
Mm-hmm.
this version of A Star Is Born, and he's just, I mean, he's a wonderful, wonderful human being.
No, I can tell. I mean, he seems like an amazing guy. And I know it's so interesting because, I know my mom and dad had met you and over the years, have seen you over the years, and I know that but I actually only met you. I met you in 2012, I believe, and I met Liza for a brief moment in 2014 at one of her concerts. But the story of how I met you, I just want to end on this, is so sort of incredible to me and means so much to me because I wanted to meet you for years, but it was through our mutual friends, Renee and Shane, who said to me one day, they
Who
were
are,
like,
by the
hey,
way, who are, by the
yeah.
way, doing the Christmas show.
Oh, they
They
are. Okay,
they are
great.
producing the Christmas show.
Oh, I didn't know that. Oh, fantastic. Well, I'm excited to see. I mean, they do a great job with everything. I know
They
they've worked with
do.
you on a lot of stuff over the years. But I remember they said to me, we're going to see Lorna perform in Palm Springs, and if you want to come, we'd love to have you. And I'm sure that after the show, we might get a chance to. We'll probably get a chance to go backstage and meet her. So I was like, of course, like even if I just to see the show and maybe get a moment with Lorna, I was like, that, of course, I'd love to do that. So I remember being in the audience. I was with my ex and current, new best friend, still best friend, Sean, and we were sitting in the audience together. And you stop in the middle of your show and you say, my mother did a film called Star Is Born with her co-star James Mason, and she always said how she couldn't have done it without him. And his grandson is in the audience tonight. You asked me to stand up, and Sean, by the way, already at this point was in tears, and I was pretty close myself. But you said, "This one's for you, James," and you performed "The Man That Got Away," and that, I think, I mean, hands down, has to be like, at least for me, it was one of the like most special moments of my life.
Oh,
And
bless you.
it just felt like coming full circle. I never got to meet my grandfather, so being able to connect with him in that way and have that kind of moment, I'm getting emotional thinking about it right
Oh,
now. it
no.
was
I mean,
it was
listen.
really that special to me,
I
so
mean,
thank you.
listen. Our
Really.
story goes on. Okay?
Yeah.
It does. And
Yeah.
because the one thing that I always loved about, about your grandfather was the fact that he knew he wasn't the first choice.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, which is
there
tough.
were like there were like five: Cary Grant, Frank
Oh my God, it
Sinatra,
was like
Humphrey Bogart.
everybody. I mean, everybody wanted to do this film. Cary Grant, my mother and my father wined and dined and took to the races. Cary Grant, when his agent finally said, we just can't have him, be a washed up movie star,
Mm-hmm.
alcoholic. And my mother just said to me, if I could only get the dinners back. I just always thought, oh my God, that's really funny. Get all those dinners back. Um, so, I mean, that he knew, and so he was not bitter. He wasn't,
Mm-hmm.
he was grateful and he was
Yeah.
generous. And the other thing that I know a lot of people do know, um, and I don't like to focus on it, but it's such a part of my legacy. Is your grandfather did the eulogy at my mom's funeral,
Mm.
and that
Yep. I
we
was actually about to bring that up.
yeah we all got together and said there's no one who would be better because he was
Wow.
so truly and honest and so perfect and so elegant and so classy as he always was. So that's why I mean, yeah,
Well, yeah.
I know that we have that uh, that I have that memory.
Well, it's incredible to think. I mean, of of the history and how long ago that was, and what, over 50 years ago now. And the fact, like, one of the great lines, I've read the eulogy. I've never been able to hear the whole audio of it, but the one line where he said something like, she gave so much of herself, that in her performances and to the world, that there's no real way that we can repay her.
Yeah.
And I think he really did look up to her like that. and
Oh,
and
he
and
did.
um and I think that there was a special, I think a lot of people have sort of, because they want to make it salacious, they always said, oh, there was a romantic connection or whatever. I think no, what it really came down to was
A
he
friendship.
respected her. And I think he was such a humble, from what I've heard, from what my dad has told me, and other people have told me, he was just a really humble man. And I think
Was.
he was very happy to let her, like, I mean, the fact that, I don't think he didn't go to the premiere of the film. He wanted
Yeah.
Judy to sort of have her do, sort of recognition. And so I think in a way it worked out perfectly, because had it been someone like, I mean, and he also, by the way, took a lot of performances that were vulnerable and that were sort of, risky, in a way that I think people like Cary Grant or Humphrey Bogart, they wouldn't have been able or willing to show as much vulnerability. And I think, that kind of, and to allow Judy to sort of be try to compete with her in terms of, I think it just really worked out perfectly. And
Oh, you
yeah,
can't picture anyone else as Norman Maine
yeah.
except grandfather. I mean, and he did so many. What was amazing about your grandfather was the fact that he did so many different kinds of roles.
Hmm.
You know, um,
Well, even Humbert and Lolita, like, I was watching at the end of the film when he breaks down and he runs out of her house, and I was thinking, like, it's rare for a male actor, a male leading man, sort of that era, to be vulnerable like that. You usually try to put up this veneer of masculinity and, sort of machismo. And, in a lot of his performances, he would cry, or he would, show like a
he
sort
was
of,
a wonderful actor.
yeah,
And
yeah.
the one thing about your grandfather was, and I know I've talked to your dad about this, is that you never saw him acting.
Hmm.
And there's very few people you can say that about. You
Hmm.
always saw the character.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah.
you can always say that about Spencer Tracy.
Hmm.
You can always say that about James Mason. The one thing though that I have to say was that your grandfather could read the phone book with that voice. And everybody would just sit down and go because he just had one of those distinctive, unbelievable, but because of his accent and because of where he came from and that resonance in his
Hmm.
voice, um, I sort of put him with, as I call the people who, there are so few of those people. Richard Burton had that.
Hmm.
Richard
Yeah.
Burton, you knew the minute he said hello, you went, "That's Richard Burton."
Yeah.
Uh, and
Mm.
and your grandfather had that, but it was the fact that he was he never was dishonest in his work. He was always honest, and that's why you loved him.
Hmm.
And by the way, Your grandmother, she was fabulous. Okay. Your grandmother, I mean, I have all of these photographs of your grandfather, your grandmother, Portland. I mean, all of these wonderful photographs which you've seen.
Mhm.
At I guess it was at the house, and it was just, she was quite something. She really was, and I love the fact that I know the street wasn't named for her, but I love that she lived on Pamela Way.
Pamela Drive,
Was it
absolutely.
Pamela Drive or Pamela Way?
Pamela Drive, yeah.
Pamela Drive.
And it's from time to time when my mom and dad are in town, we go and we check out we go by the house and we check out the sign and everything. I mean, it's
So
and
great.
people don't know who. Obviously, she was not on the level of James, but in her own way, at least in LA, it's actually funny. I actually back when like about 10 years ago when I would go to like the Hamburger Hamlet on
Oh,
Sunset or
yes.
Kate Mantilini, I would get way more than James Mason. I would have people go, wait, Pamela Mason is your
Yeah,
grandmother? Like she was a presence in LA and
she
on the
was.
radio and on TV, and she was one of a kind, no
She
question.
was absolutely one of a kind. And I got to tell you something. We haven't really, we've spent this time talking about my mother, but your mother. Your mother is amazing. Your
No.
mother is so, I mean, she's so talented. She's so gifted. I mean, she represents so much to women who at the time did not get a fair shake in the pop world as far as having a band. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, she really broke that glass ceiling. And I mean, Belinda is just one of my, she's a hero because she
Mm-hmm.
just said, I don't care what you think. Okay, I'm going to do what I do. And she did. And
You did,
I always
yeah.
thought to myself, that's amazing. And she never was scared. That's what I really admired about your mom and that time because so many people said you can't to
Mm-hmm.
her.
Mm-hmm.
She didn't understand those words.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think you both have a lot in common. I mean, the fact that you've persevered and you've been through so much, and you've overcome it all, and you've been so successful, and I think you deserve a lot of that credit as well for being
Well,
such a
I think that
force, a force.
thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
But I also think that you become who you are through time, through knowledge, and through age. And
Mm-hmm.
I think that we've all screwed up and we've all been, I always say, we've all been in the circus on the trapeze. Okay. The trick is to just keep swinging.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the trick. And,
Mm-hmm.
your father has always been one of my favorite people in this business because he is smart. He's desperately handsome. He is he's grounded. He's always just been one of those people that has weathered the storm of a child of,
Mm-hmm.
which
Mm-hmm.
there's a small club, you know,
Mm-hmm.
of of us. And when I
Mm-hmm.
say child of, I'm talking about legends. I'm not talking about
Right.
stars.
Well, you both have a unique experience, and it's an experience that I think is, really, like you said, is unique. I mean, the fact that, and you're both of the same era. You grew up in the same town, in
Yeah,
Beverly Hills when it was really sort of the golden era of that. Back. I mean, that's a when I hear the stories. I mean, I know you too. I mean, when I hear the stories my dad tells about how we met the Beatles and Elvis and Marilyn. And I mean, it's just like, whoa, like and you're still both, you're still both, young. You're still young and like able to. You're not. You know what I'm trying to
Well,
say?
I
Like
sent you. I think
adults of that time are long gone. So,
yeah, but I think
you
I
know,
sent you that picture. Did I send you that picture the other day? If I didn't, of my mom in the Oval Office.
no. Oh
I
my
have a
God.
picture of my mother in the Oval Office with Jack Kennedy, and she's leaning on on the desk of the Oval Office smoking a cigarette. And I thought, this, with Danny Kaye, this
Wow.
is like, I was wondering, was she thinking, I could do this? You know? And Jack Kennedy's just one. I mean, I just love this photograph
Oh, I
because
have to see it.
just
I have to see
I'm
it.
gonna send it. I'll send it to you right when we finish. And I just love. And my it was my daughter who said, "Is Grandma smoking a cigarette in the Oval
No.
Office?" And I panned in really and went, "Yep,
Wow. I
yep."
mean, has that picture been publicly released before,
Oh
or
yeah,
is it like a?
everybody's yeah. People have
Oh,
seen
how
that.
have I not seen that? Oh my God, I have to go look at that. I mean, of course, I know the whole story about when she called the president in the network meeting, and how she sang over the rainbow to
Yeah,
him over the phone. I mean, I
yeah,
know they were friends.
yeah.
But no, I know we've gone like way over what we were supposed to do or was supposed to do. But thank you so much. Before we go, I
Oh,
just
thank
want to
you.
ask you, other than the Christmas concert, which again people can buy tickets for on your website, but are there other things that are percolating, like things that you're planning to work on once things are back to normal, whenever that
Well,
is?
yeah, whenever that is. I mean, yeah, I think all of us are waiting for theaters to open,
Mm-hmm.
and for people to feel safe to go into theaters. I think that
Mm-hmm.
that's going to, it really is, it really is a one day at a time
Mm-hmm.
moment, because there have been so, it's really taught it's taught my daughter, it's taught my son, my daughter-in-law, my as you know, my daughter's fiance is a first responder.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just, I think what it's taught all of us, which is a harsh lesson, is that we can't make plans
Mm-hmm.
and that we have to live in the moment. And
Mm-hmm.
we have to realize that there are going to be celebrations that we have to, and I don't use the word cancel.
Mm-hmm.
We're just postponing it.
I mean, can you imagine once things go back to when we find when most people are vaccinated? I mean, it's going to be insane. I mean, the
I
amount of
hope,
like,
though, that I
yeah,
hope people go into the yellow. You know
right,
what I
right.
mean?
Ease back into normal life
Ease back
versus,
into it.
yeah.
You know, and I think that if we can understand about, I know that it's the holidays, and I know it's become an incredibly commercial, uh I guess you would say, business, the holidays. And
Mm-hmm.
I mean, listen, it's this, everything stresses you out at this point anyway. Okay, so never mind what we're all going through. But it's just this Christmas, I think to myself, this is a reflection time for all of us to maybe say, I didn't do enough for another person, and this is what I'm going to do. Because I mean seriously. I'm not I don't need anything. Do you know what I mean? It's not about, oh, will the mall open? I don't care. I want to, let's go to charities, let's go to food banks, let's go
Mm-hmm.
to and have a note sent. This was made in your name as a donation. Let's do that.
Mm-hmm.
And that's, I think Christmas should be every day. And that's why I don't really, I don't, when my children were little, it was all, lights and craziness and candy canes and all of that stuff. And now I find it really, a reflective time of all of the wonderful things that the holidays have brought, but also a time to sit back and really reflect on humanity.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we've got a great shot. Okay, because it's called, we don't need to be mean to each other.
Mm-hmm.
That's all
Mm-hmm.
gone. That's all
Hmm.
gone. Bye.
Hmm.
You know,
I,
people don't know, people know exactly what I'm saying. Bye. You know?
hopefully there are a few lessons that we can take away from this, because I think you're right. If we go back to normal, the way things always were, in terms of the way people interact with each other, and not living in the moment, all of that, I think it'll be a big waste of time. So hopefully, yeah, hopefully people do keep that in mind.
Yeah, I think that
But
hopefully they will. Hopefully they will, and that the craziness of the media that has been our sort of connection to the outside world while we've been in lockdown and all that. I think that it's their responsibility not to make the vaccine the be all and end all of our, that we have to, we, even with the vaccine, what I'm trying to say is, with the vaccine, be responsible.
hmm,
Just be
yeah,
responsible. Don't think the vaccine is let's put on the party hat, and it's like,
right.
no. Okay, and I
Mhm.
just think that I hope that that message is getting out there to
Hmm.
people.
Absolutely. Lorna, thank you so much
I
for doing
love
this.
you,
Thank you
Jake.
for allowing me to take your time. I know we've
No.
gone way over, so thank you. Though I thought it
Good.
was more than worth it. So thank you,
Well,
seriously.
thank you, honey. And I
And hopefully I
see
get to
you.
see you in person one day soon.
Well, you
You know,
will.
I mean, hopefully sometime next year. And my mom and dad, they haven't been here. They haven't been able to come since
I
January. So I'm sure they'll be here a lot next year,
Oh,
and
great.
they'd
But
love to see you.
give them my love,
All
my
right. Well,
best wishes, and say hi to the cat. That's a whole other drama. But
we
please
want to, we,
say
we won't get
hi
into
to
that. I
the
mean, that's a good
cat for
story,
me.
but well, we'll save
Another
that story
go.
for another time. Yeah, it's a good one though. It's a good one. All right. Love you. Thank you
All
so
right, love
much.
you.
Happy holidays. Talk
You
soon.
too, Angel.
All right. Love you.
Bye.
Bye. Bye. Let's see.